Yeah,
exactly.
Beautiful weather.
Okay.
It's awesome. All right, guys, we're gonna get going here. Lots and lots and lots to cover today. I'm not sure we're gonna get to everything, so we'll do as best as we can.
The parents and
I'm just gonna have to get everyone muted here, so give me 1 second.
Yeah, pension.
Then what I'll allow you, if you need to get unmute, just let me know and I'll get you unmuted. All right, great. Thanks everyone. Tony, I'm just gonna unmute you so you can chime in, or just Tony, if you want to monitor the chat for me too, if you can.
I'll watch the chat room. No problem.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Awesome. All right, guys. So if my PowerPoint wants to cooperate here, we'll get going. Lots to cover. Obviously, we're very lucky today. Kind of changed on the fly this week. I had one agenda, but with all the stuff coming, a lot of course, chatter this week about government rule changes. So we're lucky. Paul Taylor's agreed very last minute to come on here and tell us about what's going on. So we're quite excited to see what Paul has to say. Very big agenda, so we'll get into it. Just let me give you some general updates before then I'll bring Paul in, because I know all you all want to hear from him. And then we're also very lucky we have Geoff Rabideau is going to be here as well, navigating the closing process and how HST can affect your closing. So I have actually had so much new construction going on now, investors coming in. How does HST play into that? So we're going, and then we have a lender update. We have Interfinances here. Kieran is going to be wrapping us up, and we'll have you out hopefully by 11:30. Okay. All right, so let's get going here before we bring Paul on. I just want to go through some stuff in the news. We probably all heard this yesterday. Home sales are up just a little bit in the GTA, to say the least. There's 15,650 properties sold across the GTA, representing a 97% increase from the same month a year ago. Now, that being said, you know what, we can take it back a little bit. March of last year, obviously, that's when everything kind of shut down. We saw, so it's, you know, yes, it's high, but it's still, if you look at a year over year, March from last year was obviously soft. So, you know what, you know, and it said, like, the board noted that in sales that the second half of March were up 174% on a 1 year basis. So still, again, last March was when we first got into the first big shutdown. So maybe not quite as exacerbated as that number looks, but still, it's just crazy. Another big thing, the average selling price in March climbed to 21.6% over year. That's a huge increase in how, like, you know, that's just crazy. So, you know, basically, like, housing prices was at the average price was 1.1 million. That's not your big home, that's average. And the dearth of inventory, of course, now was down 0.7%. The heat in the GTA was strictly, obviously, outside of the city's core. Detached property sales surged to 111%. Year over year, and so-called in the 905. So obviously Mississauga, Hamilton, Oakville, the average selling price for those detached homes in the surrounding area rose with 31.4%. So that's just crazy. A 31% increase in housing prices. It's just, they're talking about this is the last time, you know, they haven't seen this since like the surge of the big 90s. And then we had obviously a decline in 90, 91. So going to bring Walter on later if he's on today to talk about that. So yeah, some just crazy. Now what's happening? First-time home buyers, guys, are getting squeezed. It's just, it's really terrible. Rates, I was talking about, first-time home buyers now expect to pay $433,000 on average, according to a recent BMO survey. Sorry, that's a big deal because a typical individual first-time home buyer only makes around 60 grand, according to Stats Can, with a minimum 5% down payment. The most expensive house they can qualify for is $248 with no condo fees. So, you know, there's nothing that is around getting that. That's over 42% less than what first-time home buyers plan to spend, according to the poll. This is funny. Note to single people: if you're out there looking for a new home, you might want to ensure that you're putting, you know, a minimum FICO score, Beacon score on your online profile, and make sure they have enough provable down payment and provable income to pass the stress test, right? So, a little bad humor there. Meanwhile, the country's average home price, again, as I said, reached over 678. So just huge. That's a 25% increase in just 12 months, right? So that's the biggest nationwide price gain in 3 decades. So that's crazy. Of course, soaring home prices means surging down payments. 36% of first-time borrowers report they can only muster between 5 and 10% down, right? So I know we had Sagan on, formerly Jenworth, on last week, talking about their borrowed down payment program. Please make sure you're aware of that program, because that's going to become a lot more, you know, obviously poignant these days, because clients are going to need it. So that's a really big thing there, that what we have to look for. So that's a really good thing there. So sorry, to say that home prices are running away for newbies is an understatement, of course, and 40% have had enough, telling BMO they'll wait until home prices come down. So you got to think, you know, how long are these people going to going to keep going in, right? So it's just a lot for first-time home buyers. You really feel for them. So there's been so much stuff in the news. What is the government going to do? What could happen? Could there be government rule changes? We're thinking that it could be just days away or coming out with a new federal budget. There could be a number of different things. Rates by, and Paul and I will talk about it. They had a really good article about what could happen. How did we get here? The government, basically a number of reasons, and Paul will tell you, there's a number of years of mismanagement of supply have added to the COVID-related listing shortages and helps us get to this point. Housing inventories are still at never before seen lows, which is the problem. Of course, there aren't the only fundamentals behind these astronomical gains. Consider that income and employment gains we've seen in the home buyers demographics, record low interest rates and record savings rates. National Bank CEO said that they think that, I think we somewhat understand what's behind the housing activity. It does not appear to be excess leverage. So again, like it's almost like a perfect storm for housing. You have lower interest rates, you can't go anywhere. You know what? The only thing you could really do is get a bigger and better home or fix up your existing property. So it's almost like a perfect storm. RBC is talking that one phrase is that one thing is certain, there's no silver bullet, all demand side options have to be on there. They even, RBC, I think it was the bank, Paul will probably be able to correct me on that, to say that they actually had suggested that to even maybe look at getting rid of the capital gains exemption for selling your property, which I think would be quite pretty crazy. So what we'll do here, how we got here. Now, one of the things that the government looks at is they have a new metrics that they like to use in terms of what's going on. They have a new metric that it's called loan to income, or LTI, and basically look at the percentage of your mortgage loan or your indebtedness compared to how much you make. Currently, it's sitting at over 450% in that, and it's obviously, as you can see from the chart, it's the highest it's ever been. And now, is that excess leverage, or do you not have a choice because the housing prices have come up so much, right? So that you can look at that in a bit of context, saying yes, this number is high, but housing prices are extremely high. So what could they do? So me and Paul will talk about it. Reduction in the maximum debt service ratio. Rates by said it's maybe a 50% probability. Major new supply creation initiatives. Hopefully to God, they're going to do something about the supply problem because we believe that's it. Tighten rental financing guidelines, maybe no borrowed down payment for rentals, higher minimum credit scores, Bank of Canada rate hike. I would think that it was be pretty low, but I think I'll bring on Paul now to talk about that. How you doing, Paul?
Good. How are you doing?
Good, buddy. Thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, no trouble at all. Bank of Canada rate hike probability is about 0, I would suggest.
I would agree, because if they did that, they would just kill us. Like our dollar would go up so much because everyone else is lowering it, and then you'd kill all pause. I would agree with that. So I don't think that would be on the table there for that. Yeah, because if you start increasing rates and no one else can, that's really going to make us a lot more anti-competitive when it comes to trying to selling our goods.
The government has spent about $400 billion to date trying to ensure that the economy continues to move and we've got healthy economic activity. The quantitative easing purchases of debt and such have kept interest rates low very deliberately. And even though there are some calls for raises in those interest rates because there's potential inflationary pressures beginning, I don't think you're going to see the Bank of Canada flinching as people are asking for that. If they raise rates too fast and they do start to contract the economic activity that they have been spending so much money to support, all of that spend will have been for nothing. So they are going to wait until the absolute last possible minute, I think, before they start really raising those rates. If you listen to the commentary, there's an awful lot of slack in the system. There's still a whack of people that are unemployed that they want to ensure get back into gainful employment. They are far more likely to be comfortable experiencing inflation in 24 months than trying to get out of its way. It's much better to have to deal with a hot market than to stall it before it gets there right now, especially when you consider the expense that we've already suffered.
Well, and you got to think, obviously now we're in a third wave, who knows, but it looks like we're in another shutdown in here and in BC. So the two biggest provinces, are now kind of retrenching again, and now you're seeing more shutdowns. And I think in the next month or so, we're going to see more businesses having to close their doors because, and a lot of restaurant owners, you feel for them, like not even a week ago, the government said, okay, now you can have 50 people up. Now, a week later, not even a week later, they're completely shut down, not even with patios. And I talked to a number of restaurant owners, and one here in town, and it was called Beer Town. Go figure on there. And for the first time in a year, they actually had a full inventory of kegs on tap. And they just got them in. And he said, now 2 days later, I'm shut down. He goes, I'm over 15,000 in the hole just for beer. Yeah. So it's you got to think that getting a little rough start for him is that. I think we're going to see that play out even more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think it's where it's going to go with housing. So Paul, before we delve right into it and all the other stuff, so tell me a bit about what's going on at MPC lately. What are some of the events or initiatives you guys have going on?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dave. So I think we're probably all just going to end up talking about what's happening in the marketplace. There's been I drafted an email yesterday that will probably arrive in everybody's inbox, I'm guessing as soon as we get off this call, but it really talks about what the board's discussion around current market position is. There have been calls by Robert Hogue at RBC to examine an implementation of a capital gains tax. Others have come out against that, but there's been a lot of things discussed: vacancy taxes at the national level, foreign buyers taxes. There have been talks about potentially increasing the stress test or reducing debt service ratio maximums, capital gains on sort of speculative purchases. So we've definitely thought about it. Yeah, blind bidding as well, Neil. That's a great point. A slightly different subject matter, but I think anytime we're discussing sort of the price of housing and accessibility, anyone that's been through that process remembers not really knowing how much extra they should be putting in, and so it's definitely something that hurts folks. I don't know if I'll come back to this, but they've had open bidding in Australia for years, and in 2017, Sydney and Melbourne had exactly the same inflationary pressures of housing that we had here in Toronto and Vancouver. So I don't know if the elimination of blind bidding really does much to stop appreciation. Any of you that have been on a car auction or ever been on eBay will know that the last 2 minutes of those activities are massive flurries. And if the incremental increase is $1,000, you might find that people are actually more encouraged because of that bidding process to extend a little higher than if they have to think cautiously about, do I go in for another 50 grand? Like, that's a lump. Mm-hmm. So there are pluses and minuses on both sides of that, but certainly psychologically, I think people feel much better when there's transparency around it. As to the sort of the taxation or the restrictions of credit issuance, which seems to have taken the lion's share of the discussion, at least through media anyway. Mortgage Professionals Canada, as most of you on this call will have heard me say ad nauseum before, has had a long-standing position and request to government to make the stress test less onerous. We asked for them to uncouple it from the bank account. Initially, we were looking for it to be somewhere set around 75 basis points, but we knew there was next to zero appetite for them to set it there. So then we started asking, well, at least uncouple it from the Bank of Canada rate. If you want a 2% test, then just make it 2% floating. They actually did make the announcement that they were going to do that last February, and they said that they were going to implement it in April, but then all of the businesses were closed down in the middle of March, and all of that was put on pause, which is a bit of a shame. But we'd been asking for that for a while, because it's a little disingenuous to say that you're preparing people for a potential rise in interest rates at the same time that the governor of the Bank of Canada is promising people that it's going to remain at the absolute minimum lower band until at least 2023. That said, you put a slide up a little while ago that talked about the 450% loan to income metric. Mm-hmm. That's actually been part of studies that the IMF have been running for a good number of years. I'm sure Peter actually can probably comment on that given his time with ING. And IMF and OECD have always sort of said in the reports, loans greater than 450% LTI are really the most dangerous. And in the event that there is an economic shift, those obviously, as the highest leverage, have the highest propensity for default. And when you're considering systemic risk, that's where lenders and regulators need to be paying attention. So I actually think it isn't stated this way, but the regulatory view of stress tests and GDS TDS ratios are actually really more practically mathematic ways to try to reduce the number of people in that 450% loan to income bracket. And because we've got such low interest rates, we end up having this chicken and egg of a very circular discussion about people are leveraging, the loan to income size is increasing, but house prices are increasing. It's all sort of part of the same causality. People are managing what they can afford on a bi-weekly income basis for the large majority of mortgage holders. You've got pretty regular income. You qualify based upon your debt service ratios. Broker will tell the consumer what their upper echelon is for purchasing approval, and then they go into the market. If there's a lower interest cost, you got more to spend on the principal, and you're still managing the same monthly payment. So it's no surprise that prices are increasing. There's more sort of space for those prices to grow in people's monthly budget. Yep. And so we, as you said at the beginning, it's kind of a perfect storm at the moment. The pandemic has really made people focus on where they're living, because that's where they have to spend all of their time and work and school their kids again now. So all of the demand that we saw, I think, up until the end of last year was really real demand. Like it was families or individuals looking to make a change for their own personal lifestyle reasons. There's no point spending a premium to live in the city anymore. The bars, the live music, the entertainment's closed. So I may as well get more for my money if I go live somewhere and I don't have to turn into the office. I think because we've seen price escalations in the face of what we thought were going to be reductions, given the debt, the mortgage deferral cliff that we were talking about, 8 months ago, that was going to see a whole bunch of listings because people couldn't make their payments, didn't happen. And as people have become more used to the idea that the new normal is just working from home and my income is actually still really secure, and now if I'm asked this savings because I can't spend money on anything, what else am I going to do but spend the money on my home? Now it's getting a little out of control. We are getting speculative bids, which are driving prices up. That discussion at the beginning of this call, actually, about the bidding war around a cottage, it makes my eyes water even thinking about it, really. And in sort of 2016, 17, most of the speculative activity was taking place because investors were looking to flip. I think it's a little different now, but people are definitely stretching in this sort of fear of missing out mode. It's still predominantly end users that are trying to get into those homes. But listen to Benjamin Tal, or if you listen to any economist talk about the immigration targets that we've set, the market is only going to get more constrained and more competitive across the next 12 months. So if I don't get in now, I'm not going to be able to afford at all to get in 12 months from now. And that's also playing on the group psychology. So I think government is definitely considering making an announcement of some sort just to break the psychology of people that are feeling like I have to get this house right now when they're considering what they can spend. If you look at 2018, when the B20 changes were introduced, there was a pretty immediate psychological effect when that stress test was introduced. I'm not a fan of the way that it was done, obviously, but it certainly had the intended systemic impact. And when the changes were made through the summer that year at the provincial level, both in BC and in Ontario, actually, we had that housing measure, I forget what they call it, Housing Measures Act, had a whole bunch of additional tax implementations in there anyway, that also really immediately put a stall on activity. It's not long lasting, but it makes people pause before they write a big check. And I think that that's probably what policymakers are hoping for. Now, that listing that Rob put in his article here with the probabilities, I'm not sure I follow quite the same list the way that he does. But we definitely are in conversation with policy folks at the Ministry of Finance, as well as Financial Sector Policy Branch, which is kind of an arm of the Fed government that support financial policy. We are not at MPC in favor in any way, shape, or form of a more stringent stress test or reduced debt service ratios. If those are applied to the market in a blanket manner, it is the first-time buyers who are predominantly excluded from the market. Those are the folks who are supposed to be purported to support. And government's own election campaigns has said, we're all about the aspiring middle class. That's not what happens though. So we saw those people get pushed to the sidelines with the last round of changes. We can't support that. The speculative activity is the stuff that we think should be focused on. And so I haven't heard of exactly the appropriate structure that I can support yet, but some of the things that we think would make more sense to ensure that if there is bidding taking place on a home, the owner occupiers have got a little bit more advantage than an investor purchaser would because of the structure of the underwriting requirements. So if there's a reduced LTV maximum for other than primary residence loans, for example, or higher down payment is the other way to say that requirement for secondary homes, or there was some sort of speculation tax such that anybody that purchased an existing stock home, I have to be really careful about the way to say this now, for the first short while. BMO actually put out a report. They were suggesting that you might suffer a 100% capital gains tax if you buy and sell a property inside 12 months. And that over a 5-year ownership period, that capital gains exposure will tear its way down to 0. But the intent is to penalize people that are looking to just use real estate as their means of income. But for the rest of the folks that are looking to purchase to own and live there, you don't get that exposure. I can kind of get on side with that. You got to be really careful though that if you do implement something like that, there has to be a carve out for new construction. Because if we are in any way harming the potential addition of new supply to the market, we're clubbing ourselves over the head. It's the lack of supply really that is the root cause of all of these price appreciations, right?
Okay. Yep.
So we absolutely need to make sure that we are encouraging new construction of all varieties of homes. I think right now, ground floor access, sort of townhouse, row house, split level stuff is probably in the greatest need. But we need to be really smart about the way that we're putting these policies together. We can't just keep tightening credit issuance. From the OSFI's perspective and from the bank's risk profile perspective, eliminating the first-time, most highly leveraged buyer is the simple way to manage the risk exposure on the portfolio. I totally understand that. But we've done that for the last 15 years. Every change we've made has just constrained credit and squeezed out the people that were the quote-unquote worst credit risks. It's like the headmaster rolled into a new school and he first expelled everybody with an F and then patted himself on the back that his GPA was going up. And then he expelled everybody with a D. And then he patted himself on the back because the GPA was going up. Can't keep doing that. Can't keep doing that. We got to support the people that need the support at the bottom end of that scale. And we need smart, targeted approaches to ensure that we're providing advantage to the people that we're supposing to support.
Well, and Claire makes a good point. Like, I know they're obviously concerned about, obviously first-time homeowner, but again, if we do anything to restrict rental property access, then of course, then that increases rent, and then that could look at increasing rent and hurting your the people, the Fs right on the bottom end again. So I think it's a really slippery slope. Paul, I was wondering, so there seems like there's a big push and a pull here. Because there's a push because they want to do something to rein in the real estate market, but the housing market is so out of whack, and as you said, so unaffordable. What do you think is reasonable? What does your gut tell you that you think they might do in terms of to rein it in and maybe make things more? I don't know if you can do both. But what does your gut tell you?
I hope I don't control what they do, sadly.
For sure.
I wish I did.
Paul,
But
I go for you.
I hope that in the budget, they don't do anything, but that they make very strong statements about a number of different policy recommendations they're considering that would potentially calm marketplace activity.
Yep.
I think as long as they signal strongly, they can actually achieve the psychological impact that they're hoping for. And honestly, that is required right now. But if you listen to Tiff Macklem or the former governor Polas, an excited housing market, I'm paraphrasing, but an excited housing market was absolutely a risk that they were prepared to take when they dropped interest rates to record lows for the sake of ensuring that they kept employment as high as possible and that people could continue day to day. So I don't think that that perspective has changed. But as the prices continue to escalate and everybody is reporting, we can anticipate another 15 to 20% appreciation across the next 12 months as well. There definitely has to be some consideration for something.
Actually, Paul, sorry, go ahead, Dave.
Sorry, good. Tony, go ahead, buddy.
So, Paul, I got a question for you. You know, with the house prices going up so fast in the last year, and right now, in theory, I mean, the borders are pretty much still closed. So would it be a fair statement to say that, I know immigration, they're talking about next 3 years, bringing in 400,000 people for next, every year, next 3 years. But if the price is going up so high right now, would it not be just the local people here right now buying it, driving up the price? I mean, because technically the foreign buyers aren't here yet.
There's an awful lot less investment from foreign purchases because exactly as you said, immigration numbers are in the toilet comparatively. So it's definitely domestic demand that's driving it. That's the real difference now between the current inflation pressure and 2016, 17. The other thing is, this isn't just limited to the cities any longer. People used to talk about driving until you could afford it. Well, you don't have to drive back anymore. You can drive out as far as you want to, and then you're never going to have to go into the office. So because of that, the bleed all across Canada, I think, is the significant difference in the year over year average price appreciation used to be very much driven by 2 points on opposite ends of the country. I've got to get in camera here. Now it's everywhere. The whole thing is rising up because everywhere is in more demand.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing that. It's definitely going to be a balancing act. Now, Paul, do you think in the budget, will they think they, Drum just talked about the supply side. Do you think they're going to do something on that to incentivize builders to make it easier to get the shovel in the ground, to incentivizing, investors if they're building multi-unit properties and stuff? Do you think that's something that they may consider?
I definitely hope so. I think everybody is aware really that they need to be adding more housing. They have to. And the best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago. The second best time is today. And it's exactly that same story with housing. We should have been constructing. We've been shortfalling on number of residences based upon the number of new family formation for at least 2 decades here. But we need to change that direction quickly. I think you might find that there is consideration for conditions on an awful lot of that funding that goes from the federal to the provincial to the municipal governments. We'll give you this money, but you need now to start changing some of the zoning of your local grounds. You need to sell some government lands to ensure that we can get residential construction. You need to just deal with the NIMBYism and put in place as of right zoning around transit hubs so that we can increase density and not get quagmired by 5 years worth of local municipal communities getting together to say, you can't put a 4-story building in my neighborhood. The government structure in Canada, unfortunately, makes it very, very difficult to be able to manage that in the same way or at the same level of efficiency as the UK or Australia, for example. They're much more centralized. There's one prudential regulator across the country. There's one conduct regulator across the country. And so they also, the same level of government in the UK manages land transfer tax equivalents, what they call stamp duties, and the current interest rates. So they have all of the levers and can coordinate things much easier. We have to coordinate various levels of government with very different political pressures upon them to be able to achieve what we all in this industry know is a required national outcome. But it's much, much harder to get people in line with the same sentiment.
Yeah, and that's going to be the thing. And it's like you said, as you said, it is a bit of a perfect storm. But it's it's going to be interesting because so many people now are out of the market, and it just looks like it's going to keep going up. And the lockdown isn't going anywhere for the next little while. We could be here for another year in this thing. So, and it just, even on that note, we talked about building multi-units. We have a property here in town. We're looking to add a couple, make the units bigger. And we just met with an architect, and the amount of stuff, like, we don't know how to do it, because just like to add. And that's what the government wants, is they want us to increase and build upon rental properties. The amount of red tape that we have to go through to do this is just ridiculous. So it's getting us rethinking whether we do it or not. So it's because it's such a pain.
And you've got thousands and thousands of dollars worth of exposure just for the permits and the application. There's no guarantee you even get the approval.
Oh yeah.
Deck is definitely stacked against the densification that we need at the moment through the bureaucracy in place. Absolutely.
Yeah, so we hope you see it. So, all right, well, Paul, thank you so much for being on today. Appreciate you coming on so quickly. It's it's a really, really obviously important time. So if the government moves in the next few weeks, maybe we get you back on to comment some more. I know you're always keeping us up to date with everything, so I really appreciate everything you do for our industry, Paul. You guys do a great job there at NBC.
Yeah, you know what? I appreciate it too, Dave. Can I just make one or two quick closing statements?
Please. Go ahead.
So there should be an email that's arriving to all of our members shortly that will basically just summarize what I've just said about what we're reading in the media and the things that the board are considering as sort of the positions that we likely will be taking to government. We may find that we are required to have a policy stance that is constrictive in a particular way. If you've got any feedback, if you have any brilliant thoughts about how that should be structured, we have an email address that is advocacy@. Please send us your thoughts. I'll read all of them, I promise you. What was the second thing? I probably just wanted to say thanks for the opportunity. Keep your eyes out though. This was the other thing. Government doesn't need to use the budget outside of a tax structure. The budget isn't necessary for them to make changes to guideline B20 or underwriting sandbox rules in CMHC or insurance requirements. Ministry of Finance and Superintendent and OSFI can make those changes anytime, which is why I'm hopeful that in the budget, the finance minister really just alludes to, these are a bunch of things that we're thinking about, and we may well be implementing them if we don't see the correction we're anticipating. But I mean, June, July, August, any time that they wanted to, OSFI, CMHC, and Ministry of Finance could implement the changes that affect the structure of underwriting anyway.
So Paul, just quickly before you go, lastly, so the change they were going to make last year about uncoupling the stress test to the 5 year, do you think is that off the table now, or you just what do you feel on that?
I don't think you're going to see anything at all that would loosen the reins around credit issuance today. Yeah, we keep asking for it, but I mean, there's still government's pouring billions of dollars into income support for folks. So making it easier for people to get a mortgage by making qualification a little less stringent that's a non-starter right now until the economy is actually on its own feet. And when we probably get interest rates somewhere closer to at least 1.5% overnight rate, I think they might start thinking then about the stress test adjustment. But while it's beneath 1%, I can't see them doing anything to make qualification easier. As I said, mathematically, they're trying to avoid people getting across that 450% loan to income threshold. So if you're reducing the stress test, mathematically, you allow more people to get across that line. And IMF and OECD will wag their finger at Canada quite aggressively if we're seen to have policies that are encouraging that sort of borrowing.
Oh, for sure. Awesome. Well, Paul, thanks again. I really appreciate you being on. Again, guys, this is one, we're all NPC members, and it's the best money you're going to spend. The amounts of work that they do for us down in Ottawa and Queen's Park and right across Canada is amazing. So, Paul, thank you again for everything you do for us. And so we need to have that voice out there, and you do a great job. So, thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Dave.
Awesome, Paul. Great, guys. All right, we'll move on. Now, Geoff, how you doing, sir? We'll bring Geoff on now.
I'm doing well. Thanks, Dave. How are you doing?
Yeah, buddy. How are things, Geoff? You're in Kitchener-Waterloo.
Waterloo. I'm in Waterloo. So it's the good city of Waterloo. It was funny. In the beginning part of the year, we saw a very hot market here. I would say we had properties going for a property that was like 900,000 went for 500,000, 555,000 over list, right? So that was in February. And then we started seeing a leveling off in the region here a bit. And so I would say now we're more in a balance. I'm actually seeing clauses in agreements of purchase and sales again.
Oh, no way. Interesting.
Yeah. So it's interesting because in February, maybe we're getting 25 new properties to the market. Now we're seeing about 150 new properties to the market every day here. Yeah,
listings are definitely up, which is a good sign. Even like walking in my neighborhood and stuff, I think it's hopefully that's going to be, we're getting toward that tipping point where you got to think the ceiling is getting reached here quickly, right? So it's
and that's
it's
really
a good thing.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Great. Geoff, well, I'll let you share your screen, or I'm not sure if you have something prepared. I'll let you go over there. But Geoff is he works with a lot of us, in closings, and he'll talk about at the end what he can do for your clients. But he's a great partner with us here at Mortgage Alliance.
Perfect. Well, thanks for having me, Dave, and thanks everyone for having me. Paul, thanks as always. You're a great presenter, and it's a pleasure to follow behind you because you brought everybody in. So I get to ride your coattails. Thank you very much. So
awesome.
I'm a real estate lawyer. I've been doing virtual signings long before it was actually COVID brought it on. I've been doing the whole virtual remote signing thing for about 5 years now. We're one of the ones that actually my law firm is one of the ones that started the whole virtual signing process. So we're located in Waterloo, but we do deals right across all of Ontario. So this is not just for people in Waterloo. This is for people right across Ontario specific. So today what I want to present about is HST and new builds. So I had some brokers reach out to me from your brokerage and had some questions about new builds, and David and I talked and said, I might as well just give you guys a presentation because a lot of the same questions were coming up. So that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. Okay, guys? So it's just the taxation of new build properties. And this is also prevalent now because what we're seeing more is people buying new builds with the intention to flip. And so how does that happen with the HST? So I will give a disclaimer. I am a real estate lawyer. This is a presentation. Everything I'm providing you today is not legal advice. You cannot rely and hold me to whatever I'm saying. All right. So as a general rule, every supply of a real estate is applicable to HST. So that would be a sale of real property, a lease of real property, an option to purchase real property, an assignment of a lease, and an assignment of an APS. So remember that every supply of real estate is applicable to HST unless there's an exemption. Now, in order to be exempt, it is based on the nature of the property and the use by the seller or vendor that determines whether the property is exempt. So those two things, nature of the property and use by the seller. Typical exempt supplies would be sale of used residential properties, so resale properties. Residential properties where the lodging is more than 1 month. Short-term rentals for less than $20 a day. Obviously, we don't see that anymore. Farmland sold by farmers to their children or to their grandchildren who are acquiring it for their own personal use, and vacant land. Now, not all vacant land, but some vacant land is exempt from HST.
Oh.
Now, it's just like HST is when you go shopping at the store. It's the seller that has to collect HST, right? So it's the 13% HST, which you guys know it's broken down 5%, 8%. And so on a typical $500,000 purchase, let's say, the HST would be $65,000. But there is two types of rebates. There's a rebate called the new home rebate, and that's for people that are buying the property to live in the property. And then there's the new residential rental property rebate, and that's the rebate for people that are buying the property with the intention to rent out the property. Now, there's a good explanation here. So the principal residence, in order to qualify for the rebate for the principal residence, you have to be purchasing the property to be used as your primary place of residence. Now, this can be either yourself or your immediate family, being your children, your parents, your siblings, your spouse, or your common law partner. Now, those are the people that can qualify for the HST rebate with you purchasing it. As long as one of them lives in that property, you qualify for that rebate. However, aunts, uncles, cousins are not considered direct blood relatives. And therefore, if you were purchasing the property on their behalf, you would have to pay the HST on closing. So those people would not qualify for the principal residence rebate, okay? Also, in order to qualify for this rebate, you have to move into the property within 90 days of closing, and no one else can have resided in that property prior to that 90 days. So I had a client once say to me, hey, Geoff, I've got my house here and I'm purchasing this brand new build. I'm going to put my house up for sale, but that one's closing next week. Can I Airbnb it? Or can I rent it out until this one closes, then I move into that one? I said, no, you can't, because you have to be the first person, or your immediate family has to be the first person to move into that property. And if you do that, you're going to lose the HST rebate. Okay, so it's very important to note that. Now, there are two forms, the GST form and the RC form. Now, those are prepared by the law firm. So on a purchase, we would prepare those forms. You don't have to prepare those. Now, there is the rental property rebate. Now, in order to be eligible for the rental property rebate, the purchaser has to pay HST on closing. Now, that's a big difference, because the other one, the rebate is automatic, where in this one, the rebate is something you apply for after closing. Therefore, you have to pay the HST on closing. And in order to qualify, and this is why you don't get it right away, because you have to submit an application to the government. You have 2 years from the date of closing to submit the application to the government. And with that application, you have to provide a copy of the lease, and you have to have a tenant on at least a 1-year lease in order to qualify for that rebate. So if someone has a 6-month lease or a month-to-month, it doesn't work. It has to be at least a 1-year written lease in order to qualify for this rebate. So the big thing, like I say, the big difference is paying that HST on closing, okay? So it's an upfront cost that a lot of people, when they're purchasing a rental property from a builder, they don't foresee that. They think they're going to have to pay the exact same amount that's listed, right? They think, okay, well, it's listed at $650,000. I'll just pay $650,000 on closing. No, it's not the same. You have to pay upfront and make the rebate after. So the two forms, the GST 524 and the RC 7524. Now these two forms are prepared by the borrower purchaser in that case. So the purchaser has to prepare those forms and send those into the government along with that lease. Now it's important to know that pre-COVID, CRA was taking about 8 weeks to get that payment back to the purchaser. Post-COVID, I can't even tell you how long it's taking anymore. Right? It's really? The amount of time, it's well beyond 8 weeks. The amount of time that CR is taking to do everything right now is really slow. So I apologize. I pre-COVID 8 weeks, post-COVID, if anybody knows, if anybody's have that ability to let me know in the chat function what you're seeing, that'd be great, because I just don't even know how long it's taking now.
So Geoff, so on a rental purchase, basically, would you apply for it almost immediately as long as you have a 1-year tenanted agreement? You can basically, you'd want to apply for it right away then, I'm assuming. Right?
Correct, yeah. So you have up to 2 years to apply, but you typically want to apply right away. Correct. Yeah. To get that money back faster. Now, remember, the rebate is broken. So the tax is broken into 2 portions, and therefore the rebate is broken into 2 portions, the federal portion and the provincial portion, okay? And so, as we know, looking at the screen here, we know the GST portion is 5%. So therefore, I've got some examples for you. Now, obviously, these numbers don't really make much sense. Of a purchase price, $320,000 times 5%, the GST portion of the tax would be $16,000, right? The rebate then is $5,760. So it's 36% of the GST, up to a maximum purchase price of $450. Once you hit $450, then the rebate is lost on the GST portion. So you get nothing on the GST portion for purchase prices over $450,000. Now, if you're purchasing for a principal residence to reside in it, this won't matter to you because it's already built in the purchase price. You don't see the difference. But when it comes really different is when you're looking at a rental property, because now the rebate, you're applying for it and you're still paying the GST portion. That, let's say on $450,000, you're still paying that $36,000, but you're not getting anything back towards that portion on the rebate. Now we see the PST portion, right? So we need to know the PST portion is 8%. That's the tax of 8%. and then the rebate is up to 75%. So what we see then is that once again, you'll see the tax. Now the PST portion caps out at $24,000. So even here, my example of $450,000, you see that the PST would be 36,000, and you would assume it would be 75%. So you assume you'd be getting 27,000. No, it caps out at 24,000. 24,000 is the maximum amount you can get for your PST rebate. All right. So this, what we see here, is just what I took from the statement of adjustments, which determines the net sale price of the property. You see here that purchase price of $362,800. We back out the rebate, or the federal portion and the provincial portion. We add back in the rebates, and then we set the net purchase price. So when you're looking at purchasing, let's say this is obviously was a condo. When you're looking at purchasing this condo, $344,866.92, then that's the net purchase price. That's what you're purchasing the property, the value of the property, and then the HST is added back on, and that's why you see at what you're purchasing from the builder, $362,800, but really your purchase price is $344,866 prior to the tax.
So your builders basically will build it into your purchase price for you.
Correct. Yeah, the builder builds it in, because what they're doing is they're perceiving that they're going to pay the tax and get the rebate back, because you credit on closing. What you do is you credit that rebate back to the builder, and so they see that, okay, we're getting that rebate back, so therefore this is what we're going to charge you. Now, if in the event you're not getting the rebate back, let's say it's a rental property, here's where you see the difference. Okay, so on closing, if it's a principal residence, then what you see is that your purchase price is $362,800. But if it's a rental property, then the rebate is not applicable on closing. So you're paying, so you can apply after the fact for this $26,000 rebate, but on closing, you're paying it.
You have to come up with it.
You have to come up with it, right? So you or your clients will have to come up with that portion of the HST on closing. Now, it's important to know, most properties you're going to deal with, the purchase price is over $450. Most properties you're dealing with the purchase price over $450. So if you're curious what it would be, once again, the maximum amount of the rebate, once you're over $450, is just the $24,000, because the PST caps out at $24,000, but you don't lose it. Where the GST, you lose it, right? So if your purchase price is more than $450 and you're just trying to do some, what is the purchase price going to be? If it's a rental property, just add $24,000 to that number. Okay, so if it's $500,000, well, that's going to be $524,000. That's going to be your purchase price if it's a rental property. Okay, just quick and easy.
And that 24 grand. Now that 24 grand, Geoff, you can get that back as long as you have a 1-year lease.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
You just have to wait for it for them to send it back to you.
Exactly. Okay. So on closing, you'd be paying that extra 24 grand, and then make that application to get it back after closing. Correct. Okay.
Just a quick question, Geoff. Christina had. Now, if it's an owner-occupied rental, so if it's a triplex and you're living in one, do you get the money back right away, or does it become a rental, or do you have to apply for the rebate?
So that's always been a good question. So in that instance, now this is where it comes down to the discretion of the builder, right? Okay. So the builder has the discretion, because what happens is the builder is the one who is applying for that rebate and getting the rebate paid back to them. So if the builder is concerned, what they will do is say, too bad, it's a rental property. You need to pay for it and apply for it on your own, and let CRA pay it to you. Because if CRA disallows it, then the builder's out the rebate amount.
Okay.
And so what happens, I've seen a lot of times, is I've had clients buy a property and they turn around and want to sell the property within the year. So and if it's a condo, well, we order a status certificate. The builder then finds out, because it's maybe not done, and then the builder will reach back out to us and say, hey, you got to pay that rebate back to us now and reapply for it on your own, because it's within that 1-year period where they're concerned that CRA might disallow it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's always, when I have clients ask me that, and I say, wait the year, right? Typically how it works with CRA is, if you can justify to CRA that the reason you're selling this property within the first year is because of a change of a family scenario, your family grew larger, you change of job, or something of that nature, then you can at least challenge CRA's ruling. But the whole point is that means you have to actually challenge CRA, object to CRA. If you just wait the 1 year mark, then you shouldn't have to even deal with CRA or be concerned about it. But if in the event you're in that area where you're concerned about it, you know what CRA looks at is what, especially for condos that took 4 years to build, right, or 3 years to build. At that point, CRA definitely has to understand that your life is going to change, but you want to take into consideration, like, okay, I have another baby, I changed the job, I got married. Just obviously COVID changed everything. I need more room. We're moving out of the city. And if you're just looking at it as just you went to the property and you know what, it didn't work out for you, then what you can do is what CRA looks at is what evidence do you have to confirm that you actually lived in the property with the intention to live in it. So things they look at are what mail comes to the property. Do you have any magazine subscriptions or anything like that that is in your name coming to the property? Did you change your driver's license? When you filed your taxes, did you put that address on the property? Prior to COVID, did you have a housewarming party, right? And did you take pictures to prove that you actually moved into the property? So these are the things that CRA will be looking at if in the event you have to challenge them on this. Okay.
That actually happened to us when we moved into our house we have now. It's new construction. So a year later, then CRA sent me a letter. So I had to send them a copy of my driver's license with the address and a utility bill.
Yep. Yeah. So those are the things. If you can provide any of that information evidence, they'll pretty much accept it. But yeah.
Good question here from Raymond. Is there a difference if the buyer sells it on assignment? So how would that affect if you have? I'm
going to show you that next.
Amazing. Look at that. Raymond knew.
Right. Perfect segue. Thank you. Assignment of properties. All right. So if it's a pre-closing, so let's say you or your client are purchasing the property and you're assigning it prior to the closing, then what happens is CRA will view it as a flip, right? Once again, and that's why the evidence I just talked about, if you can justify to them that it's not a flip, then you should be exempt from having to pay a capital gains on the appreciation of the property, right? But that's a separate argument of this. HST in that case would still be applicable, and you would have to collect HST on the markup, the appreciation on the property. So if the original purchase price that you bought it at was $400,000, 3 years later you sell it for $450,000, right? Prior to closing, of course, pre-closing sales, then at that place you should be collecting the $50,000 plus HST. And what happens a lot of times, and I see this all the time, is realtors use a software called Web Forms. And Web Forms does not pre-populate the numbers properly, right? There used to be a different software they call it, used Easy Offer, but it did it right. The new one they all use called Web Forms doesn't do it right. So if in the event they're going to do it, look at it very carefully, because that Web Forms often misses the HST and it doesn't calculate the deposit originally paid on the property. Okay, so just for your knowledge, if you come across that an assignment, be very careful on that assignment form because Web Forms is incorrect.
So Geoff, in that case, if someone is doing an assignment sale, would you suggest meeting with someone like yourself first to make sure to go over the offer to make sure it's set up correctly? Okay.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I have a lot of my realtors will send me the assignment forms just so I review them, or a lot of my clients will, right? And I don't charge for that. I just, because I know them well enough, I can look at them quickly and I can correct their math for them.
Okay.
Yeah. But something, obviously, if you're going to do this, be careful of the HST. You have to collect HST because if you don't, then you're liable for that HST.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
Now let's talk about an assignment of property post-closing. So if in the event, let's say you or your client purchase the property and then you assign it post-closing, which means you're just turning around and selling it post-closing. In such instance, if you do not have a business number, then you cannot qualify for the HST rebate. And then in that instance, you must collect HST on the sale from the new purchaser. Okay, the new purchaser can still qualify for the rebate, right? So you pay the HST on closing. You collect the HST from the new purchaser. The new purchaser can apply for the rebate. Now, it's important to know, if in the event you receive the HST rebate on closing, then you will have to pay it back, right? So you can't double dip. You can't get the rebate and then have the new purchaser get the rebate, of course, right? It's a flow through. Okay.
So now, what is the timing for post-closing? Is it like day of closing, or when do they consider, like, is it, because anything afterwards is just a regular sale, right? So,
correct.
So an assignment is day of closing.
Typically, the day of closing or right immediately after, provided you have no one has resided in the property. Right?
Okay.
If
so
anybody
bought it for like a month.
Exactly. In that case, then it's just a resale property, right? And then, so if provided it's right after closing and no one's lived in it, and the reason why you would do this is sometimes the builder won't let you. So the builder has to agree to you assigning the agreement of purchase sale prior to closing, and a lot of times the builder won't agree to that, right? So what?
Or they charge you a fee.
Well, or a big fee, right? And so what a lot of my clients do is they'll just close on the property and then do the assignment right after, which is just they'll purchase it and then turn around and sell it right away. All right. It is important to note though, but if you do that, you still encounter land transfer tax on the purchase, right? You cannot avoid the land transfer tax. It's still a purchase and sale.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what we're looking at here. So it's very careful. You got to remember it's pre-closing or post-closing. And you know what? I will gladly provide this presentation to you. Okay.
Yeah. So guys, so Geoff will send it over to me and we'll post it up and I'll send it out to everyone.
Exactly.
And we'll put the, another good question from Celia. What if the property is purchased and closed under a holding company? Would the holdco need an HST number?
So purchasing with a holdco, it would be best, yes, correct, to get an HST number. Yes. So if you're purchasing as a rental property, then you get the HST number, and then you shouldn't have to pay the HST on closing. And what you could do then in that instance is self-assess, which is the corporation would assess its HST on closing. So then you provide that HST number over to the builder. Now, not all builders are comfortable allowing purchasers not to pay the HST, but that's the standard way, right? So most builders are typically good with it, but some of the smaller builders just don't understand the rules of HST, and they just say, no, you just pay the HST and you apply for it after the fact, or you deal with it after the fact, right? But the standard procedure is provide the HST number. You shouldn't have to pay the HST, and if you do that, then you would actually be purchasing the property for $344,866 and 92 cents.
Okay. So now, would you advise, if you're purchasing as a rental, to get an HST number for new construction, whether it's in your own personal name or in a holdco, or would that differ, Geoff?
I wouldn't. I would only do it if in the event, because there's a rebate for it, right? So there's a rebate for it, so you don't have to. And with rental leases, so if you're renting this property out, you don't have to collect HST on it either. So you're not charging HST to your tenants. So there's, in that instance, provided there's a rebate there, there's no need to get an HST number because it's just a lot more work for you. The annual filings and everything is not worth it, right? However, if you're going to put in a holdco, then in that case, it's worthwhile to get an HST number.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
All right.
Actually, Geoff, I got a question for you.
Yes, please.
Geoff, suppose you buy just say you buy a secondary property and you really use it. For example, you buy a condo, you want to use it as a secondary home or for a family member. And that was your really intention, like, your daughter or son's going to school, you buy a condo in Windsor or whereabouts the area. So they move in and all of a sudden, a month or 2 months later, no, they want to move out and live with their friends in a house.
Yep.
But the fact that you bought it and you didn't pay HST because you say it was like, like a secondary home, what happens in that case with CRA then? They might come back and say, hey, it's a rental now.
So was this purchased from a builder?
A builder, yeah.
Yeah, so in that instance, it depends on what you're going to do with it. If you at that time rent it out, it's very, now this is
Would it be okay if you had a 1-year lease though? Like as long as he had a 1-year lease, wouldn't it be okay?
Well, so but in this instance, he's already got the rebate on closing.
Yes.
Right? So you already got the rebate on closing.
Okay.
So typically in that instance, it's very unlikely that CRA would find out that you've been turned around and it's now being used as a rental, right? It's if in the event you want to sell it within that year, then at that point, that's typically when the builder would step in or CRA could step in. And there might be some justification given. But if the idea was someone actually did move into it and you have some ability to prove that they moved into it, and then they just turn around and moved out, it's very unlikely CRA would find out, right? So in that instance, it's very likely that you then have to justify the argument.
Okay, makes sense. Okay,
awesome.
Just want to go through if there's any other questions that I missed.
No, I think we're good for now.
Uh,
Sorry. Celia's saying, yeah, so what happened to the purchase and close on our holding company needs, CRA did find out from my client and then made them pay it, then apply for the rebate. So you have to go and pay it. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Cool. Go ahead, Geoff.
Okay, perfect. Okay, guys. Well, Geoff Rabideau, real estate lawyer. We are a fixed fee law firm. We charge $16.99 for purchase, $1,099 for sale, and $1,099 for refinance. And then we discount the purchase and sale down each $100. So you get $25.99. So this is fixed fee, title insurance, registration costs, everything built in. So I'm not the one of those lawyers that has hidden fees saying my fee is $750, then I throw additional $2,000 at the client. So no, it's just what it is. So we're located in Waterloo. You have our information, phone number. We can share that all with you. The law firm name is Rabideau Law. And yes, we also do private deals, and we do private deals in the sense that we can represent the lender side and the borrower side, right? So I have a law firm within a law firm, so I can represent both sides of the transaction. Yeah.
So Geoff, what do you guys say? You guys, in terms of what are you seeing right now? What are you the most busy with right now?
Actually, right now, what we're seeing a lot of purchase and sales. So it's the market started hot this year, and it started a little bit early this year, which was obviously what we saw. So we've seen a lot of more purchase and sales coming earlier this year than normal. Typically, what we see through the winter markets is a lot of refinances. Now, the refinance market stays the same. It's pretty stable. It doesn't fluctuate up and down much because it's just constant throughout the year. But it's really the purchase and sales have started earlier this year, and I think part of it is because the market was so hot, and the other side is partly because it was a carryover from last year. A lot of people that didn't get in the market last year carried over into this year.
Sorry, are you saying here? Claire's asking, are you seeing any buyers? Sorry. I'm trying to get a question here. Are you seeing any buyers not closing and wanting to pull out of their firm deals because that maybe their appraisals and stuff? Have you seen many deals falling apart because of values and such?
I haven't seen many like that. I've been seeing more on the refinance deals being delayed and having to be reworked because of the debt, people's debts. It's COVID debt, let's call it. A lot of COVID debt. I've been seeing more of that than people walking away from purchase and sales. Yeah.
So just in terms of, just not enough money on, so they've other debt accumulated and kind of just basically didn't have enough a down payment for the new purchase, Geoff? Is that kind of what
No. So I'm seeing on refinances, where I'm seeing a lot of deals being reworked. But on purchase and sales, they've been pretty stable. I have been seeing a lot more gift letters though, and a lot more parents hopping in to help, and a lot more parents getting involved in the transactions, trying to rework things to help them out, right? Maybe pay off their debts or stuff. But overall, I haven't been seeing many deals falling apart on the purchase and sales side.
That's good. So question here, great session. Have you contact,
I saw a Rupinder asked one. If client buying third property from builder and property will owner occupied, are they still eligible to claim HST rebate? So provided, so as long as the purchaser is going to reside in the property or their immediate family members, then yes, they can claim the HST rebate. It doesn't matter if they have a portfolio of rental properties or other properties, provided that they're going to reside in that property or family member is going to reside in that property, then immediate family member, yes, they can get that rebate. Awesome.
Good. Awesome, guys. Well, what we're going to do here is we're going to make it a bit long. So so Geoff's going to send me this presentation, guys. We'll get it out to everyone. So we're running a bit behind. So just some great information, stuff you need to know. So I really implore you to work with Geoff. Like his responsiveness is great. Like an HST question, like on the weekend. Yeah. So you're not going to get that from any law firm. So Geoff, I appreciate everything that you do. And actually, I got to send you a purchase agreement because we're buying next year. So I have to get you to review mine. So you'll get that in the next couple of days. So yeah, it's lots of stuff happening. So I really appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Great. Awesome, guys. Well, have a great day. Guys, I'm just trying to see here. I don't know if Kieran was able to get on the call. today or not. Not sure if she's on. If you're there, Kieran, let me know. If not, what we'll do is a couple more minutes here. Reaza, are you still there, buddy?
I am. Let me just. How you doing? Great, great information there. Thanks, Geoff.
Awesome. Reaza, we got a few minutes left here. I thought I'd just bring you on here quickly. A lot of questions about you're doing some new construction stuff now. So I wonder if you could quickly kind of talk about what you guys are doing.
Yeah, for sure. So I posted it up on each of the sites there. I hope everyone saw it, but you can reference that. And then if you guys want to send it out to the team, just a one pager. So the most significant change that we've made in the past, we were lending on a cost approach. So the budgeted cost plus the land value and up to 75%. The significant change that we've made is a couple things. So we are now considering lending off of future value or finished value, the end value, up to 75%, depending on location, of course. And then the other significant change is the price point. So in the past, we were roughly 8.5 plus 2% lender fee. And that's now dropped down to match what our residential product page states. So up to 65%, we're priced in at 699 plus 2%. 749 plus 2% at 70%, and 75% now is 799 plus 2% lender fee. So that just gives you an idea of where the price points are. But again, the significant change is looking at lending on end value up to 75%. And that's pretty much throughout Ontario in our major lending areas. The other thing I wanted to point out to you, most of the lenders out there have limited number of draws, could be 3 to 5 draws. We don't have a limit on that. So as the client needs the funds, as they're going through the project and they need that draw, we can certainly take a look at extending the funds to them at that point. They're only paying for the money as it's drawn. So if we're approving, let's say 500,000 for the construction financing, it's approved and in place, you're not paying interest right away. Your client's not paying interest right away. It's as they start drawing the money. And it's a 1-year open term, by the way.
Yeah, and that's, you guys, just the reason I'm asking is I'm getting a lot of questions on new construction recently, like the last couple of weeks or so. And so I wanted to bring Reaza on the highlight because I think you're going to see more of this, especially if values get out of whack or something like that. You need to have a plan B. So are you seeing some of that, Reaza, with stuff?
We're getting calls almost daily now throughout, not just in Ontario. This goes throughout all the way out to BC for us, as far as the program is concerned. Except for Saskatchewan, sorry. But Ontario, BC, Manitoba, and Alberta, that's where we're looking at doing this construction program. But yeah, to answer your question, we're getting calls almost daily for land purchases, for people that are buying property with a building on it and looking to do the full tear down, major additions, things like this, just because it's so expensive to get into the market and everyone's sick and tired of losing out on all of these bids. So we are finding more people are looking to actually build. They're buying these pieces of land. The one thing I'd caution is, if you're looking at your clients looking at large acreage, raw land, not necessarily something we want to get into. But if it's a service lot, the ideal scenario, a service lot in suburban, urban location. And what I mean by that, we're not just talking specific to GTA throughout Ontario. So Southwest Ontario, going out to Ottawa region, Niagara Falls, any of those regions that we lend in. I see someone on here from Windsor, love Windsor. So, it's just major centers. We'll consider it.
Sorry, Sahid, I think you had a question. You had your hand up there. Do you have a question for Reaza?
Reaza, I got a question for you.
Sure, Tony.
What's the maximum size of the loan that you guys are willing to go in a first?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So we follow our residential guidelines when it comes to that home value. So we'd like to play in that maximum space of 3 million valuation. which we'll consider at that point, we're at a 55% loan to value, so 1.65 million. That's our comfort level as loan amount on the residential side. So if you're looking at, I mean, end value is 2 million, then at 2 million, we're looking at a loan amount of 55%, between that 2 to 3 million range.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah,
do you guys look at cottages?
Depending on location. So if you're talking, Muskokas, we lend up in Aurelia, Midland, Penetang, Huntsville, Bracebridge, but then it gets really spotty. So if we're talking, outside of those centers, we're not going to be the lender for that. Yeah, there are a couple other mix.
Raw land, what's your loan to value on raw land, Reaza?
So we'll consider up to 65%, again, depending on location. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, most of it, I like to say between 50 to 65, depending on location and whether it's a service lot or not. There was a question in there, I think.
Do you offer standalone bridge financing, or do you do bridge financing on your own deals?
We do bridge financing. So bridge financing, that's a good question. There's standalone, where you've arranged financing on the new purchase, as long as there's enough equity in the current property and potentially the new property. If you're doing financing up to 75% on the new property, it doesn't leave us any room, because our maximum LTV is 75%. So if there's that equity in the current property, that's either firm sale, still on the market, or they even haven't even put it on the market, we can still secure something and pull the equity out of that current property for them and do that standalone bridge. There was a second piece to that question, I think, right, Dave? Or no?
No, just do you do bridge financing on your own deals, and you do standalone bridge financing? Where if you're not actually doing it, okay. Underwriting guidelines, so I'll get Reaza to resend them to me. I'll send that out. How do you determine the value on vacant land? My board purchased for $70K, and Purview puts it at $298. So do you do appraised value?
It's appraised value. Yeah.
Okay.
It's appraised value. Purview is great for estimations. We utilize Purview more so for the title information than estimation of value. Everything that we do requires an appraisal. And that's what determines it. Even, with the construction side of the business as well, you're going to have that initial appraisal. The appraiser is going to look at the budget to do the build and everything else, the quality of work being done, and they're going to estimate a final value. So we're going to see that as is, and then final finished value. And that's what we're going to be lending off of. So yeah, appraisal on everything.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, Reaza will send me his stuff. Guys, I'm going to repost that up for you. And Geoff has already sent me the copy of the presentation, so I'll get that up very shortly. So thank you very much, Geoff, for being so on top of it. But yeah, guys, so again, please reach out to Reaza, and I'm just getting a lot of more construction, land financing stuff.
Yeah.
That would be great. Geoff's going to be coming back again in May. He has another presentation. He's going to be doing some stuff with us as well. So we look forward to having him back. So again, guys, we'll get you out a little bit early today. So thank you so much for being on the call. I'll get the recording post up. This is a really good one today. Make sure if you miss it, we'll get out to your teams. Geoff, Paul Taylor, thank you for being on. Tony Long, always representing with the second best hair at Mortgage Alliance. So Tony, we appreciate that. Thank you, buddy.
Oh, you beat me to the hair comment. Darn.
Awesome, guys. Have a great day. The market's still a lot of stuff happening. Again, if anything happens on the government side, we'll get you up, put out very quickly. Paul's going to be sending out an email to us probably in the next little while about what is going on. So just keep up to date. You have questions, but get out there to your database, talk to people, let them know, this is just good food, because it's all over BNN right now. They're really talking about housing. So something's going to happen. So, all right, guys. We'll see you again next week. We have a great session coming on next week. We're doing some more marketing stuff, talking a little bit about bridge financing next week. So we'll see you next week at 10. All right, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys.
Tony.
Thank you, guys.
Ciao. Bye, everyone.
Take care. Bye.